What is up, everyone? So today a new video on agility. This is my favorite topic. I always talk about in my post the evasion equation, and I'm very shortly, I think maybe in the next week, I'm going to try and make my full breakdown on how I look at agility, how I look at working on it. But first, for today's video, it is all about speed ladders. And unfortunately, speed ladders is referred to kind of as like the Nickelback of like the fitness industry, or kind of like the Nickelback of the strength and conditioning world. And if you don't know why that is the reference, well, because Nickelback is obviously hated, and it's still a point where, like, obviously I like Nickelback. It's kind of very fitting because I also like speed ladders, and people tend to hate Nickelback just because they want to hate Nickelback. There is no real, a lot of people don't even know why they hate Nickelback. And unfortunately, the traditional strength and conditioning world really is quite similar to that, in the sense of when you're a young strength and conditioning coach. I am still a young strength and conditioning coach, but I would say majority of strength and conditioning coaches really don't listen or try and look for themselves, or try and look at their own experience with certain stuff and try and see, well, this is how I experience something. Maybe there is a different way. A lot of people are kind of like, they have like these big heads in the industry, and in the strength and conditioning industry, it's the same. You have big heads that say certain stuff, and that is kind of how this whole thing started, with the hate on speed ladders. And there is a definite hate on speed ladders, and it's not necessarily uncalled for. I would say the hate and the rise against speed ladders is valid in a sense, because a lot of people used to claim that speed ladders is good for just plain speed development, and which is not. It's not there for plain speed development. Even I would agree with that, and I would say it is not for plain speed development. And recently, there's also been some coaches I know that I think it's TWU Strength or something. That guy, he used to post something, or usually post something about speed ladders being a good warm up. I know Max Swarmo or something like that also posted speed ladders being a good warm up and low level plyometrics, which is also good. But I'm here to make a different case for speed ladders, and make a different case for it, and how it can actually develop agility and sidestepping or juking or whatever you want to call it. So there's a lot of people that I don't agree with, in the sense that when they make videos, they always use like different coaches use different videos of dancers, like typically tap dancers, and kind of show that like that is basically what you do when you do speed ladders. And I would agree with some drills that that is true. But on the other side, what most of these coaches promote is this very typical conventional strength and conditioning coach way, is you got to produce more force. So always just get faster. That is right. But always just get faster and learn to produce force laterally. That is like the go-to slogan. I promise you, if you fill in literally any type of agility post and you find the main strength and conditioning types, you'll probably find like 10 to like 100 videos of this different people saying the same thing.
To absorb and produce
force into the ground, and you are going to get that force back out of the ground.
And a lot of it is parroted, because that is a lot of the information that goes around, and because a lot of the information is the same, different people just kind of relay it differently, but most of those messages are all the same. You want to get better agility, you've got to get stronger on one leg. That's like the go-to thing. And the next one is you have to get strong laterally, produce force laterally. And in my opinion, agility, and this is where the speed ladder is coming, agility is not a forceful equation. And the reason I say this is not that I say there is no force involved. Obviously, there is force involved. That's not what I'm saying. The fact that that is people's first thing when they talk about developing agility, for me, shows how twisted and how wrong we've got it. So my theory is that agility is really based on, and I'll make this really short because I don't want to go into that. It's another video. But my theory is that agility is very rhythm-based. It's very pattern-based, meaning you see patterns based on what defenders do, and that you get through play, like a lot of play. So it's rhythm-based in the sense that you have your own patterns and rhythms that you need to know. And if you are stiff and rigid, you won't be able to execute those rhythms. There's a lot of stuff I can go on about what it really is. And I do think training force and doing all those stuff. I do all those stuff when I train for it. But my point is that is the smallest part of the equation, yet we treat it as the biggest part of the equation. So here's my first thing that I always like to talk about. So I'm a big fan of touch rugby, which is rugby without the tackling, because it's probably one of the best games to develop your sidestepping because it's such a high level constraint. You physically cannot be touched, and that is quite hard. So when we look at this touch rugby that gets played in South Africa where I stay, you'll see some of the most high level agility that exists. And my argument against the force equation, a force is everything, force laterally. These guys are all guys that do not gym. They've never thought in their life, I need to produce more force. I need to go to the gym and see if I can produce more force laterally. These guys, everything you see on this video that I'm relaying now, has been developed through play. And not just play, but also a lot of imitating the players that they see from young ages when they play. They look up to people in the community that play this game and are really good at it, and they imitate. You should see it when you go to these tournaments. You'll see small kids doing the exact similar steps, the 1-2 step or the double step back, the turnaround step. You see them imitating this. So it's almost like from a young age, they start identifying these patterns and they want to try it out. And I think that's a way bigger part of the agility equation. I'm someone, when I was younger, I wanted to develop my agility. It was all I ever thought about, and it's really everything I worked on. And speed ladders was one of the first things that my dad put me on. And later what I started noticing a lot of patterns from the speed ladders, especially the Iki shuffle. I started noticing that come more and more into a step. So what I'm going to talk about here, I'm just going to quickly put a video here on the side where you can see me doing the Iki shuffle. I want to quickly talk about patterns and how you identify them and how you can make them more comfortable. So when you start doing ladders, it's kind of like a coordination thing, but it's rhythm. It's coordination and rhythm. When you start doing these patterns, you usually suck at them. And yes, a lot of times people say it's all about doing them with speed, but a lot of times also doing them with feeling comfortable with stretching your leg out when you do an Iki shuffle. So I do sometimes do like a bit of a variation on this, but there's so much similarities towards an Iki shuffle and a sidestep. If you do them slower and you do a bit harder steps into the ground and you make your foot that goes outside the ladder a bit further, so not just focused on speed, you really get a really similar rhythm compared to sidestepping. I'll show a few videos here, and this is all through my anecdotal experience that I experienced this type of thing with stepping. You really get this feeling that when you run in a straight line, it's long stride, long stride, long stride. When you're running and you're planning to change direction to the other side, typically, it's usually always that you take a long stride, and then with the leg that you're planning to step back with. So I'm running to this side, I'm going to step with my left foot. Then I'm going to run. My left foot makes a step. Then my right foot will make a step super close to my left foot. And then that foot will be propelled forward into a long stretch and step into the other side. That really gets, and that's a rhythm thing. That's a really, for me, it's a coordination thing, because I never used to be able to step. And then that type of rhythm started really seeping through into my side steps. And I only started noticing it later and later on. It's always a 1, 2, and you explode. So the last 2 steps you take before you make that step is always 2 very small steps and then into a long stretched step. That is commonly what happens. And if you do a kind of a stutter step, which I'm showing in the video here, which is something I also used to do a lot, and it's one of my favorite type of steps to try, because you get people that wait for you when you want to step. That is also very similar to the same thing. It's just that you fake on the long step. You're not going to do that long step. And that is something that you see in ladders, and you see it being developed, and you see a lot of people have told me, and I experience this as well, that when you do a lot of these rhythm-based stuff, so not just ladders, but a bulk of everything. So you do a lot of ladders, you're playing a lot of games, you're doing a lot of that, you start to realize that your feet almost have their own brains. That's how someone long ago described it to me. And they said, well, my feet feel like they have their own brain when I do a lot of agility training and I play a lot of touch rugby. And I have to say, I do feel the same. And I can tell you, I can look back at moments in my sporting career and immediately say, well, that was one of those moments. And that was one of those moments. I can put up here as a video of where I definitely felt that, well, my feet took over. I didn't pre-plan anything, and it was kind of more of a thing where your feet are fast enough, you have rhythm, you are identifying the patterns quickly, and you are able to make that separation between you and your defenders. So yeah, maybe saying all this is a bit of a stretch on speed ladders, but for me, it holds an extreme amount of value in teaching people rhythm, teaching people patterns, and trying to let them keep it within the ladder and expressing that pattern and rhythm within the ladder. And there's a lot of other stuff I usually do. You can look at other steps that you see on fields and try and replicate it within ladders. It's good challenges, and it's good to try and get that rhythm. And at the end of the day, yes, there's never one thing that can make you an elite stepper or a person that is really good with their agility. There is not one thing. There is not improving your lateral strength force, whatever, is also not going to help that much. It's not the one thing. So that's why I always speak about the evasion equation. And yes, pretty soon I'm going to do my full debrief on what I think you should work on. So for now, I hope you like this video, and maybe next time if you see a bit of a strength coach kind of taking a beating on speed ladders, remember it does have some value and you can use it a lot, especially if you like them. That is the most important thing. If you like using speed ladders, you feel it makes you less rigid, you feel it makes you more flowy, that is something that is also a great value of these type of things. If something makes you feel less rigid, makes you get into rhythm, that is one great benefit of having rhythm or training rhythm, is the fact that a lot of athletic stuff that you need to do asks of you to not be rigid and stiff. You need to be rhythmic and be able to flow kind of through your entire thing. So that is also a great benefit of speed ladders. And if at the end of the day, if you like them, do them the way you want it. If you like the video, subscribe if you want to see more, or follow me on Move Me Performance and Coaching, where I'll post way more information.